In the pulsating heart of the city, where neon lights flickered and music throbbed through the air, I found myself at the Velvet Lounge, a bar known for its vibrant atmosphere and eclectic crowd. It was a Friday night, and the place was buzzing with energy. The air was thick with the scent of cologne and the clinking of glasses, as laughter and chatter filled every corner. I had just moved to the city, eager to explore its nightlife and meet new people. As I sipped my martini, my eyes scanned the room, taking in the diverse mix of patrons. Suddenly, my gaze landed on a stranger sitting alone at the far end of the bar. He had an air of mystery about him, with dark hair that fell casually over his forehead and piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold a world of secrets. His fitted black shirt hugged his muscular frame, and his jeans clung to his thighs in a way that was both casual and alluring. There was something about him that drew me in, a magnetic pull that I couldn't resist. As I watched him from across the room, he looked up and our eyes met. A slow smile spread across his face, and he raised his glass in a silent toast. I felt a flush of heat rise to my cheeks, and I quickly looked away, trying to hide my sudden nervousness. But the damage was done. I was intrigued, and I knew I had to talk to him. Taking a deep breath, I made my way over to where he was sitting. As I approached, he turned to face me, his eyes never leaving mine. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He gestured to the empty stool beside him, and I slid onto it, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm Alex," I said, extending my hand. He took it in a firm grip, his fingers warm against mine. "Nice to meet you, Alex." "I'm Lucas," he replied, his voice deep and smooth like velvet. We fell into easy conversation, the kind that flows naturally when you meet someone who just gets you. Lucas was charming and witty, with a laugh that made my stomach flutter. As the night wore on, the bar grew louder and more crowded, but it felt like we were in our own little world, oblivious to everything else. The chemistry between us was palpable, an electric current that seemed to crackle in the air. I could feel the lust building inside me, a desire that was both exciting and terrifying. Little did I know, this night was about to take a turn that would change everything. 2. As the night wore on, Lucas and I found ourselves drawn closer together, our knees brushing against each other as we leaned in to hear each other over the din of the crowd. The bar was filling up, but it felt like we were the only two people in the room. His eyes, a mesmerizing shade of blue, held mine captive, and I could feel a growing tension between us, a pull that was impossible to ignore. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear. "You know, I live just a few blocks away," he murmured, his voice low and inviting. I felt a shiver run down my spine, a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had never been one for casual hookups, but there was something about Lucas that made me want to throw caution to the wind. "I'd like that," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, a slow, sexy grin that made my heart race. We finished our drinks and made our way out of the bar, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere inside. As we walked, our shoulders brushed against each other, and I could feel the electricity between us growing stronger with each step. His apartment was a sleek, modern space, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city skyline. The lights were dimmed, casting a soft glow over the room. He led me to the couch and we sat down, our bodies close but not quite touching. The tension was palpable, a thick, heavy air that seemed to crackle with anticipation. He reached out, his fingers tracing a line down my cheek, his touch gentle but firm. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering closed as I felt a wave of desire wash over me. His lips found mine, soft and warm, and I melted into the kiss, my hands reaching up to tangle in his hair. The kiss deepened, growing more passionate and urgent with each passing second. I could feel his hands roaming over my body, exploring every curve and contour, and I responded in kind, my own hands eager to touch and feel. The night was young, and the possibilities seemed endless. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a wild and unforgettable ride. 3. As our kiss deepened, I felt a surge of lust course through my veins, a primal need that demanded to be satisfied. Lucas's hands were everywhere, exploring my body with a hunger that matched my own. I could feel his heart pounding against my chest, his breath hot and ragged against my skin. The room seemed to spin around us, the city lights outside blurring into a kaleidoscope of color. He pulled away slightly, his eyes dark with desire. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice husky and low. I nodded, my breath coming in short gasps. "Yes," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He smiled, a wicked grin that sent a shiver down my spine. And then he was on me again, his lips crushing against mine with a ferocity that left me breathless. We stumbled down the hallway to his bedroom, our bodies pressed tightly together, our hands roaming and exploring. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting long shadows across the walls. He pushed me down onto the bed, his body covering mine, his weight pressing me into the soft mattress. I could feel his hardness against my thigh, and I arched my hips up to meet him, a moan escaping my lips. He kissed me deeply, his tongue exploring my mouth, his hands roaming over my body. I could feel his fingers tracing the waistband of my jeans, and I lifted my hips, allowing him to slide them down my legs. He followed suit, his own jeans hitting the floor with a soft thud. We were both breathless, our bodies slick with sweat, our hearts pounding in sync. He reached into the nightstand drawer, pulling out a condom and a bottle of lube. I watched as he rolled the condom onto his length, his eyes never leaving mine. He poured a generous amount of lube onto his fingers, and I spread my legs wide, inviting him in. He slid a finger inside me, and I gasped, my body arching off the bed. He added another finger, stretching me, preparing me for what was to come. I could feel the pressure building inside me, a coiling tension that threatened to explode at any moment. And then, finally, he was inside me, filling me completely, his body moving in rhythm with mine. The night was a blur of passion and pleasure, a symphony of moans and gasps, as we lost ourselves in each other. But as the sun began to rise, casting a soft glow over the room, I had no idea that the true nature of our encounter was about to be revealed. For, as the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, I stirred, my body aching in all the right places. I reached out for Lucas, expecting to feel his warm body next to mine, but the bed was empty. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and looked around the room. There was no sign of him. I called out his name, my voice echoing through the apartment, but there was no response. A sense of unease began to creep in, a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. I got out of bed, wrapping the sheet around my waist, and padded out into the living room. The apartment was silent, the only sound the distant hum of the city outside. That's when I noticed it, a small, framed photograph sitting on the coffee table. It hadn't been there the night before. I was sure of it. I picked it up, my hands trembling slightly, and looked at the image. It was a picture of Lucas, his arm wrapped around another man, their smiles wide and genuine. They looked happy, their eyes sparkling with love and affection. I felt a pang of jealousy, a sharp stab in my chest. But it was the words engraved on the frame that sent a chill down my spine. In loving memory, I dropped the frame, my hands shaking, as the reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked around the apartment, my eyes taking in the details I had missed the night before. The books on the shelves, the clothes in the closet. They all belonged to someone else. Someone who, judging by the photograph, was no longer alive. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized the truth. Lucas had been playing me. He had brought me back to his apartment, to his dead lover's apartment, for some sick game. I felt violated, used, and utterly betrayed. I had to get out of there. I had to escape the twisted web I had unwittingly become entangled in. But as I turned to leave, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. It was too late. I was trapped, and the nightmare was about to get even worse. 5. As the door creaked open, I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. In walked a man I didn't recognize, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw me standing there, wrapped in a sheet, his gaze flicking to the photograph I had dropped on the floor. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp and accusatory. I stumbled over my words, trying to explain, but he cut me off, his eyes narrowing in anger. "Get out!" he growled, his voice low and threatening. "Get out of my apartment." I hurried back to the bedroom, my hands shaking as I gathered my clothes and pulled them on. I could hear the man in the living room, his voice raised as he spoke to someone on the phone. "There's some guy in our apartment," he said, his voice tense. "He was going through our things." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had to get out of there, had to escape the nightmare I had found myself in. I rushed back into the living room, my shoes in hand, but the man blocked my path, his eyes cold and hard. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice like ice. That's when I saw it. A flash of metal in his hand. A knife, its blade glinting in the soft light of the morning. I felt a surge of fear, a primal instinct kicking in. I had to fight, had to save myself. But it was too late. He lunged at me, the knife slicing through the air, and I felt a searing pain in my side. I stumbled back, my hand pressed to the wound, blood seeping through my fingers. I fell to the ground, my vision swimming, as the man stood over me, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. And then, everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, the beep of machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic filling my senses. I looked around, my vision blurry, and saw a nurse standing by my bed. "You're lucky to be alive," she said, her voice soft and gentle. I tried to speak, to ask what had happened, but my voice was barely a whisper. The nurse explained that I had been found in the apartment, barely conscious, a knife wound in my side. The man, the real owner of the apartment, had been arrested, his claims of self-defense falling on deaf ears. And Lucas, the man who had brought me there, who had used me and betrayed me, was nowhere to be found. As I lay there, the reality of what had happened washing over me, I felt a deep sense of regret and shame. I had been so naive, so trusting, and it had nearly cost me my life. I had let my lust and desire cloud my judgment, and I had paid the price. In the end, my steamy night with a stranger had turned into a nightmare, a twisted tale of betrayal and violence. And as I looked out the hospital window, the city skyline stretching out before me, I knew that I would never forget the lessons I had learned. I would never again be so quick to trust, so eager to believe in the illusions of lust and desire. And as I thought about the true gay stories I had heard, the tales of love and heartache, I knew that mine was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows of our desires. So, if you're reading this, if you followed my story to its dark and twisted end, I urge you to be careful, to be cautious. The world is a dangerous place, and the people we meet, the strangers we invite into our lives, are not always who they seem. Be safe, be smart, and always be true to yourself. And if you want to hear more true gay stories, tales of love and lust, of heartache and triumph, don't forget to subscribe to True Gay Stories. Because in the end, our stories are all we have, the threads that bind us together, the echoes of our lives that linger long after we're gone.